Bacteremia, the presence of viable bacteria circulating in the bloodstream. Diagnosed with blood cultures. Blind stick, performing a venipuncture with no apparently visible or palpable vein. Blood smear, the laboratory procedure for examination of a small sample of blood on a microscope. Buffy coat, a thin layer of leukocytes and platelets covering the top of the packed red blood cells of a hematocrit. Centrifuge, a laboratory apparatus that separates mixed samples into homogeneous component layers by spinning them at high speed. Coagulation study, a blood test that may be ordered to identify potential bleeding problems before surgical procedures or when a patient is receiving anticoagulant medications. Complete blood count, a group of blood tests that includes red blood cell count, white blood cell count, platelet count, and hematocrit, hemoglobin. Contusion, a bruise or injury without a break in the skin. Diaphoretic, formation of profuse perspiration, sweat. A symptom of syncope or vasovagal response. Differential count, the percentage of each type of leukocyte in the first 100 leukocytes of a specimen. Erythrocyte sedimentation rate, ESR, the rate at which red blood cells settle in whole blood, measures inflammatory activity in the body. Gauge, the scale for sizing needles. Hematoma, a collection of blood that can form under the skin. Hemoglobin ALC, a blood test that measures the average amount of glucose in the blood over the past 3 months, can diagnose diabetes or monitor diabetes. Hemophilia, a rare genetic disorder in which the blood doesn't clot in the typical way because it doesn't have enough blood clotting proteins. Heparin, an anticoagulant that prevents the formation of blood clots, can be naturally occurring, given as a medication, or present in green-topped blood tubes. Phlebitis, inflammation of a vein. Requisition, a formal testing request, necessary before phlebotomy can begin. Syncope, temporary loss of consciousness caused by a fall in blood pressure. Prothrombin time, a blood test that measures how long it takes blood to clot. Leukocytes, white blood cells. Hematorit, blood test that indicates the percentage of blood cells in a sample of blood. Hemoglobin, protein in red blood cells to which the oxygen is attached. Hematologist, a medical doctor who specializes in blood disorders and blood malignancies. Intrinsic factor, protein secreted by the stomach that is necessary for the absorption of vitamin B12. Hemocytoblast, stem cell that resides in the bone marrow. Erythrocytes, red blood cells. Hematopoiesis, refers to the production of blood cells. Differential, blood test that indicates the percentage of each of the 5 types of white blood cell in a sample of blood. Thrombocytes, platelets. Globulin, albumin, fibrinogen, the major groups of plasma proteins, 3 terms. Erythropoietin, hormone produced by the kidneys that stimulates the production of red blood cells. Plasma, water-based, pale fluid of blood. Bone marrow transplant, a sample of developing blood cells is withdrawn from the sternum or iliac crest, can detect abnormal blood cells. Serum, plasma minus the blood clotting proteins. 3 to 5 days, amount of time to go from a hemocytoblast to a mature erythrocyte. Retimlicher, an immature red blood cell. Red bone marrow, tissue where blood cells are made. Erythrocytes, often called red corpuscles. Hematology, the study of blood. Hemoglobin, iron is needed to make this protein. Complete blood count, a blood test that includes the following: RBC, WBC, platelets, hematocrit, and hemoglobin. Morphology, the study of the shape or form of objects. Buffy coat, in a centrifuged sample of blood, this consists of the platelets and WBCs. Bone marrow transplant, a procedure in which healthy blood-forming stem cells are infused into a person to replace damaged or diseased bone marrow. Erythrocyte sedimentation rate, measures the rate at which red blood cells settle to the bottom of a blood sample. Hemoglobin A1C, a test to monitor the health of a patient with diabetes. Immunoassay, an example is the Western blot, or the ELISA test. 90 to 120 days, the lifespan of a red blood cell. Hemoglobin A1C. This test is important in assessing the patient's overall glucose levels. Human immunodeficient (HIVs), HIV. This is diagnosed by the Western blot test. Erythrocyte sedimentation rate (ESK), diagnostic test for inflammatory disease, cancer, and thyroid disease. Centrifuge, a device used to spin a specimen at high speed until it separates into component parts.